FreeBSD reviews, tutorials and gaming.
Whilst FreeBSD and Linux have a lot in common, there are some differences that Linux users need to know before they move to FreeBSD. Before we start, if this is your first time to the channel and you would like to learn more about FreeBSD and the journey to a better desktop and server, then please hit subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. This is the FreeBSD homepage, and here you will find right in the middle, in that yellow and red, is download FreeBSD. You have to decide, do you want the 12.0 or the 11.2, which are the current release versions. Here's upcoming 11.3, upcoming 12.1, and it goes into support lifecycle information. But what you want to do, which we'll have a look actually now, and it just shows you, stable branch 12. It's going to be going until 2024. And the 11 branch is 2021. And in between, you're going to get the point releases. Basically, the next one, 3 months after each point release is released onto the internet. You can choose which architectures you want each one to be downloaded on. You got the 12 release there. You can see it's AMD 64. You've got virtual machine images and SD card images for your various single board computers, Raspberry Pi 3 at the bottom. So you've got your 32-bit, PowerPC, 64-bit PowerPC, Spark, and all the rest. Not as many as NetBSD does, but it's not too bad. The one you'll probably be wanting is the AMD 64 one. And the virtual machine images also AMD 64. And again, just the Raspberry Pi one at the bottom. It's only a 321 megabyte image anyway. And you burn that onto an SD card and fire up your Raspberry Pi 3. Your virtual machine images. Yeah. It's not too bad. Any different your VHD and your VMDK formats. And the AMD 64. The one that you want to be picking is either Disk 1 or DVD 1. The DVD one allows more off-the-disk applications to be loaded in if your internet connection has not been sorted out or it hasn't got one. And there's your memstick image if you want to put in a USB stick. Although I have successfully managed to burn the Disk 1 image or the DVD 1 image onto a memory stick without a problem, but it's there anyway. And it's a 931 megabyte image. So right, that's the ones that you select. The one that I would typically suggest anyway. And there it is downloading. And the servers aren't slow. It's going at 24.5 megabits per second. Or megabytes per second. So yes, if you want to do the upcoming 11.3 beta and your current 13, that's not suggested really for production machines. Right, we're going to boot into a VirtualBox session to show you the steps you need to take. Again, you can see that there's actually nowhere on there it says install, but we'll have a rundown of what the different functions on the menu are. Because this is very much a live DVD as well as an install DVD. It just doesn't say so. And many Linux users will be used to a desktop popping up with the option to install actually as an icon on the desktop. You don't get that on FreeBSD. You have to select option 1, which is the default anyway, for booting into multi-user. Which we'll do in the end of this. I just want to show you what each option is first. The first option we'll cover, and it's actually the last option in the list, is boot options, number 6. It just lets you boot into the system, testing out your hardware, disable or enable ACPI, safe mode, single user, or verbose. And then you can load the system defaults or back to the main menu. The next one up is kernel. That allows you to load in a custom kernel or the default kernel if things go wrong. So if you customize several kernels, you can load them in there. The next one up is reboot, which is self-explanatory. And number 3 is escape to load a prompt. There you go. What that does, it allows you to fix some problems with your system, or just to generally just have a look around before you install. It's not as comprehensive as booting into the single user mode or the live CD version. It allows you to fix any problems you might have in booting up your system once it's installed if you manage to mess up your bootloader. The second one is boot single user. Now this one has allowed me to rescue the system a few times after I've mangled up the FS tab entry. If I've told it to mount a hard drive which doesn't exist, so you can just enter that without the system going all the way through to the final boot stage. So if you want to fix anything now, mount any drives, test things out, really before you go back to the booting the system, now this is the time to do it and the place to do it in. Quite a valuable little thing to have. Also enables you to actually view any attached drive to your system, and if you want to change any mount points on there before you start. As you can see, in this VirtualBox image, you just got the root and the mounted file system. Press exit, will then continue with the booting up as normal. Right, we're going to boot into multi-user mode, which is basically just setting off the install mode. So pressing 1 will take us through a quick boot up. Which takes us to the tiny little welcome screen. You can see 3 options: install, shell, and live CD. The live CD is very much like the single user mode, and it lets you boot into it. And the default login is root with no password. Right, we're in, and yeah, it's just a live session using the terminal as always. If you're expecting a nice, pretty desktop to pop up, you're mistaken. This is FreeBSD's base install. And you can see from top we're using 6,384K. I'd be surprised if it was any more considering there's nothing really running. But that's just a live CD, and therefore you can also fix any install problems that you might have on an existing system using that. If we go back to the mini welcome screen, the next option is shell. And like the one on the main menu when you first boot up, it just allows you to test some things and just have a little poke around if you wish. And the main one you want is the install. With this one you can choose your default key map. It automatically defaults to US key map, but if you want to change it, then just go down the list. In this case I'm going to choose the UK one. There you go. And you can test it if you wish. Although for some reason on this keyboard the pound sign doesn't come up, but I know it's the right key map. So you can test your characters if you wish to make sure everything's alright. Yes, these are fine. And once you're happy with that, you go to the top, it says continue, and then you choose a host name. So in this case, test VM. And you can choose optional system components. I don't like to keep in the debug things. Keep the lib32, ports, and source. Very useful to have them in. The rest of the things you can leave out. You can put tests in if you wish, but lib32, ports, and source is really all I put in. As you can see, everything's done with a cursor-style menu system. There's no point and click on this. So if you're used to that, no. This one allows you to partition your disk. You can either do it auto, manual, go into the shell and do it by hand if you wish, if you are brave enough. And again, auto ZFS. I usually choose auto. Well, it depends. If I'm doing a desktop, I do auto UFS. You can either format the entire disk and it'll do it for you, or you can partition by hand. I just usually use the default. Again, the different partition schemes. You got Apple, BSD labels, GUID, DOS, and Sun. GPT is what I usually choose. And it gives you this particular layout. Now you can modify it, delete each one, or just tweak it if you want before you carry on. But this looks fine. It doesn't do a separate home folder, home partition, which you may want to do if you wish, but It's included into the default root partition. So you can change your mind, go back, or commit, which is just carry on with the choices given. And then the install proceeds. It's fairly quick, depending on the media which you're using. This is a VM session, so yeah, it's going to be fast. You're installing the base, which is always kept separate from the userland or ports. And that's one of the strengths of FreeBSD. Currently, there are plans to perhaps streamline both together, which I am not too keen on, but FreeBSD separates the base system from the user-installed extras, as it were. Now you're installing the ports. The ports really just basically are tiny scripts which are configured and tweaked for FreeBSD, which will then draw in the program from the developer's site, do its little FreeBSD magic on it, and then install into your system automatically. So it's almost like installing your own from source in Linux, but it does it in one big step for you rather than you having to do it yourself. It's not to say you can't tweak the process, and there are little options in the say for instance if you use Portmaster, or if you go in and make a config, you can change options yourself, but it pretty much does it for you. And the source is really essential if you want to compile your own kernel, or indeed just install an Nvidia driver. If you install the Nvidia driver from the Nvidia website, which is not a recommended way of doing it on FreeBSD, best use ports or a package. But if you want to keep up with the latest Nvidia driver, then you're going to have the source installed so you can compile it against the kernel as a module. I do apologise if my voice is very deep in this. I'm recovering from a cold, so I sound even more like a Saturday night DJ. Right, we're on to the choose a password, a system password, or root password if you wish. For those who are a fan of not having any asterisks, when you're actually inputting it, it will be pleased. And there's the network interface. There's only one available in the session, so you choose that one. If you've got multiple cards in your real hardware, you're going to have to choose the one that you use. Would you like to configure IPv4? Yes. DHCP, I always choose yes. I never have a problem with it. My setup is pretty robust. But if you don't, and you want to actually configure the IP address yourself, then you select no. But I always choose DHCP. Would you like to configure IPv6? Nope. I suppose we'll all have to move to it eventually, but no. Resolve, so this is you input information, so that's your primary DNS and secondary DNS. I always put that one. Choose your time zone, so it's Europe. Go down to UK. Elland Islands. All right, okay, that's pretty cool. Looks fine. That time, the date is right. Okay, I'll do that right. I'll select set time this time. Makes no difference. Services you would like to be started at boot. Disable any that you don't want, or enable the ones that you do. Don't want dump dev. Power, no, leave that off. SH, yeah, leave them on. And local unbounded, just a caching service, so it speeds up your DNS. Now this is like a hardening option, which can be very handy if you want to. You can hide other people's processes, so you can't see what other people are running, other users are running. It just basically just wall gardens you off, really. Walls you off from the rest of the system. Clear temp. Disable syslogd, so you're not getting any open sockets that you don't want to be really open if you're not using it. Add a user. Self-explanatory. I'll just put RoboNuggie. You can put your full name here if you want, or you can make it up if you want. Like I said, just put RoboNuggie using capitals. Leave that as default. A login group, leave that as default. You can add yourself to wheel, which allows you to use the SU, so log in it as a super user. Very useful. You can put operator as well. Login class, leave that as default. Shell, I always choose SH. You can choose the one that you want. Leave that as default. Pretty much, you see, everything is left as default. Keep going default, and then it'll let you choose a password here. So this is the part where you put your own user password. If you forget it, you goose, so try and remember it. I've done that a few times. In twice, and just to verify that you made a mistake. You don't want to lock out the account, and everything looks fine. If it doesn't, press no, and you restart this part again. Add a user? No, that's it for now. And that's it. That's installed. Doesn't take too long for FreeBSD to install. If you want to install the FreeBSD handbook, it's always useful to have. You can install it now and look at it offline. And that's it. You don't want to make any final modifications? No? Well then, you reboot or go into the live CD. If it will reboot. Then when we come back, we'll show you how to update the system and install some eye candy. FreeBSD, unlike Linux, when it comes to updating, FreeBSD updates in two parts. One is the base operating system update, and the other is the userland application update. For example, on this newly installed FreeBSD installation in VirtualBox, if I want to... Well, first I'll check the version that's actually installed. So it's FreeBSD 12, and there's no patch level yet. If I do FreeBSD update fetch, it will go online and it will actually pull in all the information to update the system. It's a little bit slow, but we'll give it time. Right, it should give you a long list, hopefully. Do. And the hard drive light is flashing away. Isn't it always the case when you're doing a demonstration that it just decides to take a long time? Alright, 1,239 patches. That's because this is a freshly installed version. It's going to take a long time. I'll fast forward the video so you're not hanging around. Right, we're coming towards the end. It'll be finished in a minute. Yeah, what this update will do, will install all the essential security updates and core system updates that's needed. Okay, we're almost there. And this is separate from all the other things like X11 or Firefox. They're all in the userland area. I'll show you how to install them later. So it's applying the patches. Again, if your system is... Once you've installed FreeBSD and you've updated it using FreeBSD update and you've installed them, subsequent updates will be a lot faster and more efficient. I mean, you know, if you've updated Linux in any way, then you know that most updates are incremental anyway. The initial first update after installing a distro is going to be the biggest. Right, okay, that's done. It's just showing you what we've updated. So we got some some Wi-Fi that's been updated. WPA supplicant. SQLite's been updated. ACPI power. Yeah, that's fine. So the next thing you do is FreeBSD update and then install. Oops, yep, install. So it's one thing bringing it down, and then you got to install the patches. Again, if this takes a long time, I'll fast forward. Oh, it's done. Squiggle that out. Just going to reboot the system. I know it's probably not necessary, but old habits, especially when you're dealing with actual core updates. Oh, I can put reboot, or should I put shut down now? Whichever way. I'll come back to you when it's rebooted up, and I'll show you the version. Right, just rebooted back in, and if I do a uname now, as you see, it's still FreeBSD 12, but now it's patch set 4. So we've got a nice update going there. The other ways to update the system, once you've got some userland stuff installed, is either, well, you can use 3 ways. 2 of them are related, and the other one is binary. So you can either do pkg update. So again, because this is the first time we run it, it says the package management tool is not yet set to install the system. Would you wish to fetch to install it? Yes, we do. And what this does is it'll enable you to install and update via pre-compiled binaries. A bit like your apt-get in Debian and Ubuntu. 31,778 packages that are in the database. I'm going to put upgrade, but there won't be anything there. No, it's not there. So right, I've shown you how to update the core system and how to update using pkg. There is another way to update the userland or the applications that you might install, and that's using ports. I will keep that for another video, because if you're a newcomer to FreeBSD, that can seem a bit daunting. It may not be daunting to everyone, and if you come from, say for instance, I don't know, Arch or Gentoo or something like that, then it's going to seem easy. Or for a lot of Linux users who come from a Debian or Ubuntu background, or even Red Hat with RPM or Red Hat based, it may seem a little bit off-putting. So we're just going to keep it at PKG for now. PKG is great, it's fast, they're pre-compiled, they have the limitations, in the sense that the packages are not particularly tailored to your specific needs, in the sense that they're kind of generic. They may include some things that you want, or may include some things that you don't want, or they may omit something that you need compiled into the package. But you know, we'll come across that a different video. But for now, that's just the basic way that you can update the system, the core system, and then any userland applications. Because this is an install in the VirtualBox, then I can't really show you or go through the proper procedure in order to install Nvidia driver. But say for instance you're on your own machine and you've got a relatively recent Nvidia card or Nvidia base card there. You just pkg install Nvidia driver. Will install the latest, which I think is like 390 or something like that. It's not the latest there is, but latest for FreeBSD. Card there. If you've got a slightly older card, then driver 340 is recommended. And if you've got a really ancient card, then I think it's 3 or 4. That's also recommended. But, you know, if you've got a card that only needs 3 or 4, then I think you need to upgrade your system a little bit. So that will install the Nvidia driver for you. And there is no need to, as with most Linux systems now, there's no need to have a separate or generate a Xorg file. I like to have one because I like to make sure that everything's there, just in case the actually Nvidia entries is put into the right place and all the fonts are there. But if you don't, the system will work perfectly fine without it. as all modern Linux systems do now, anyway. So that's how you just do the Nvidia driver. But here we are. We've got a system. It's updated. As to the latest one. But we have no desktop. Now, I like to use XDM. XDM is a login manager. You can, of course, use anyone that you like. You can use Slim or LightDM. They're all available too. I'm not going to install them, but I'm just going to install a basic desktop, and then we're going to start it using StartX. That means that you have to go into the .x init.rc and then just type in a simple command in a line in order to start up the window manager or desktop when we put StartX. So, which desktop you want? I routinely use Motif Window Manager. It's the one that looks like CDE. A lot of people say it looks old-fashioned, and I like it because it's extremely lightweight and it's configurable. One single text file will configure. Of course, then you've got the looks will be changed via X defaults or X resource. That's for the changing the color and stuff. But the basic functionality of the desktop is taken care of by one text file. But say, for instance, you want to install, I don't know, Mate. It's a very nice desktop, and it's the second one that I would use. So I would put pkg install Mate. And 302 files will be downloaded. And this is without even installing Xorg. So what we'll do, we'll go back and install Mate, and then Xorg. See, slightly more. This will install X11 server and then Mate on top. And then we've got a couple more configuration files to play with before we get a running system. So we'll just get that going. And of course, it's going to take a while, 411 files. So I'll get back to you in a bit. If I was installing this Unreal hardware on a system that had an Nvidia card, I would have to make sure that the Linuxulator, which is really just a Linux ABI, like a layer that runs on top, would have to be loaded into the kernel for the Nvidia driver to work, unless you, of course, compile the driver from ports, in which case then you could disable the Linux requirement. But because I'm installing VirtualBox, that's not an option. And so we'll just do the basic requirements in order to get it running on here. And that means I'll have to edit the rc.conf and possibly tweak one or two other things for desktop use. And there we are. We've got a usable Mate desktop. Started with StartX, of course. I didn't install a login manager. You can do that. But you get the basic gist. If you want to install some programs, you open up a terminal. like Mate terminal. Change to root, SU. Then PKG install, say for instance Firefox, and then go just through the routine. And then Firefox should, when all is finished, should appear in your menu. And that's it. It's perhaps a little bit more involved than the average Linux user is used to, but it's not difficult. And there is GhostBSD will take care of all this from start to finish. So basically, GhostBSD feels and looks like an Ubuntu distribution. It will take care of everything for you, as will NomadBSD, which is for a different audience, but it's still the same. Or Project Trident, that will also do the same. All three of them, oh, it's squeaking. All three of them will actually make the install process almost automatic. FreeBSD, because it's a base operating system, and you have to excuse me if I'm squeaking, my voice is starting to give way. It's a base operating system. It requires you to do it most yourself, but that also provides you with an element of customization, which is perhaps missing from the other three, and perhaps from most Linux distributions. I've used FreeBSD now for about 11 years as my sole desktop. It fulfills everything I need of it. I don't require to use Linux, although I do use Linux as my home theatre backend using MIF TV, simply because of hardware compatibility. The hardware that I've got, like TV cards, don't work with FreeBSD, which is a shame. They are relatively new HD ones, so I have to wait a while. And the printer server that I have a printer server running. It's a simple Ubuntu server. It's got no desktop installed, and all it's doing is printing off the paper. So I could replace that with a Raspberry Pi, and I could probably replace that with FreeBSD, but I had great trouble with my HP 1020 printer. It really didn't like to work with FreeBSD, so that's just the way it is. But there are some differences between FreeBSD and Linux. They're not major. It's not like you're going from Windows to Linux. That's a big jump. But from Linux to FreeBSD, it's more like a sidestep. So it's not too bad. Anyway, hopefully you found this interesting and you found it helpful. My voice is not yet fully recovered, as you can tell by my deep, deep tone. But hopefully you found it interesting, and I got to thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. Thank you. If you want to see more videos like this, then hit that like button. And to make sure you don't miss out, please consider subscribing, as this really helps me help you.